On the cold streets of a big city, a 12-year-old boy hides an inexplicable gift that can heal. Everything changes when he transforms the life of a paralyzed millionaire with a simple touch. But what seemed like a miracle soon turns into a silent battle between greed and faith. The night fell heavy over the streets of Knightsbridge in London, bringing with it that fine drizzle that seemed to never end. Gabriel huddled his thin body beneath the damp cardboard, trying to shield himself from the cold that cut through his skin. 12 years old, but his eyes carried the mark of someone who had already lived a lifetime. On the streets since he was 6, when his mother simply disappeared and never came back, the boy had learned early on that the world had no pity for anyone. He knew exactly where to find food. The mansions in the area used to throw away more than many families ate in a week. Gabriel had his roots, his schedules, his secrets, but he had something more, something that scared him as much as it protected him, something he told no one. Since he was little, when he touched certain people, strange things happened. Once at the municipal shelter where he spent a few months, a girl had fallen and hurt her knee. It was bleeding a lot. Gabriel held her hand while the monitor ran to get the first aid kit. When the woman returned, the knee was clean. No blood, no wound, just a pinkish mark like an old scar. The monitor looked at Gabriel with fear in her eyes, and the following week he was expelled. They said he was the devil's work, that he brought bad luck, that he wasn't normal. After that, Gabriel learned to hide what happened. When he touched someone and felt that warmth rising up his arms, that feeling of something leaving him and entering the other person, he would quickly pull away. He would pretend it was nothing. But he knew. He always knew when it happened, and he didn't understand. He didn't understand anything. He just knew he couldn't tell. Never again. That night, hunger gnawed at him more fiercely than the cold. Gabriel had spent the whole day collecting cans, but the money was barely enough for a stale loaf of bread. He needed something better. It was then that he remembered the mansion on the corner of Gabriel's Walk, a huge house with high walls and wrought iron gates. He had seen the security guards throwing garbage bags on the sidewalk, always full of food. Good food. Leftovers from parties, from dinners, things that to him were a true banquet. He approached the gate, walking slowly, always alert. The security guards were usually aggressive with homeless people. He knew that. But hunger was stronger than fear. He saw the bags there next to the bin and got closer. He began to open one of them when he heard the deep voice behind him. "Get out of here, kid. This isn't for you." Gabriel turned and saw 2 large uniformed men with flashlights in their hands. His heart raced. He took a step back, but he didn't run. He had already learned that running only made things worse. "I just wanted a little food, mister. I won't make a mess, I swear." One of the guards made a move to advance, but suddenly a voice came from inside the house. A hoarse, tired, but firm voice. "Leave the boy. Bring him inside." The security guards looked at each other, confused, but they obeyed. One of them motioned for Gabriel. "Come on, get in. Dr. Henry wants to talk to you." Gabriel hesitated. Go into a house like this? He was no fool. He knew that bad things could happen when rich people took an interest in street kids, but curiosity was stronger. And somehow he felt he had to go in, as if something was pulling him into that house. The mansion inside was even more impressive than he had imagined. Huge chandeliers hung from the ceiling, paintings on the walls, furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Gabriel had never seen so much wealth in one place. His bare, dirty feet left marks on the marble floor, and he felt ashamed. He wanted to run. But the guards led him to a huge room with a lit fireplace and a leather armchair in the center. In that armchair sat a man of about 50, with graying hair, his face marked by bitter wrinkles. He wore expensive clothes but was in a wheelchair. His legs were covered with a blanket. His eyes watched Gabriel with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. "So, you're the boy who rummages through my trash. How old are you?" 12, sir." 12. "And you live on the street?" It wasn't a question. It was a statement. Gabriel just nodded. The man let out a bitter chuckle. "Do you know who I am, boy?" "No, sir." "Dr. Henry Allister, owner of the Allister Hospital Network." "Ever heard of it?" Gabriel shook his head. He had never heard of it. The man sighed as if he expected that. Of course not. You don't even have a place to sleep, let alone know who's who. But I'll tell you something, boy. I once had everything. Money, power, respect. I could walk, run, dance, until some idiot ran a red light and destroyed my spine. I've been stuck in this chair for 3 years. 3 years that no doctor, no specialist, no miracle of modern medicine has been able to make me walk again. Gabriel didn't know what to say. He remained silent, looking at the man. Dr. Henry continued, his voice growing more bitter. My housekeeper, Mrs. Irene, told me a story today. A silly story, something for superstitious people. She said she saw a street boy touch the hand of a sick woman at the bus stop, and the woman got better instantly. Stopped coughing, stopped shaking, stood up and walked away as if nothing had happened. She said the boy was you, that you're always around here. Gabriel felt his blood run cold. Someone had seen, someone had noticed. He wanted to deny it, but the words wouldn't come out. Dr. Henry leaned forward, his eyes fixed on the boy. I don't believe in miracles, boy. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in magic. I don't believe in any of that. But I also don't believe a woman with pneumonia gets cured in seconds. So I'm going to make you a proposition. You touch my hand. If nothing happens, you can leave. If something happens, well, then we'll talk. Gabriel swallowed hard. He didn't want to do it. He didn't want to use whatever it was he had inside him. But he looked at the man, saw the pain in his eyes, a pain that wasn't just of the body but of the soul, and he felt something different, a compassion he didn't understand where it came from. Slowly, Gabriel approached. He extended a trembling hand and touched Dr. Henry's hand. Immediately he felt it, that heat, that current that surged up his arms, that left him and entered the other. He closed his eyes and, for the first time, didn't try to stop it. He let it happen. Dr. Henry felt it too. A shock, as if he had been hit, an electric current. But it didn't hurt. It was warm, it was intense, it was alive. He looked down at his own legs and felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. A tingling, a sensation. Life. What are you doing, boy? Gabriel didn't answer. He remained there, eyes closed, his hand holding the man's. Seconds turned into minutes. 10 minutes. 15. 20. Dr. Henry could feel his legs returning. It wasn't just a sensation, it was movement. He could move his toes. He could contract his muscles. He could feel. When Gabriel finally let go of the hand and opened his eyes, he was exhausted. He fell to his knees on the floor, breathing heavily. Dr. Henry looked at him, then at his own legs. Slowly, very slowly, he tried to stand up. And he succeeded. His legs trembled, weak after years of immobility, but they were there, working, alive. He took a step, then another. He fell back into the chair, but it didn't matter. He had walked. He had felt the floor beneath his feet. For the first time in 3 years, he had walked. The security guards at the door were dumbfounded. Mrs. Irene, the housekeeper who had entered the room to serve tea, dropped the tray on the floor. The cups shattered, but no one cared. Everyone was looking at Dr. Henry in disbelief. How did you do that, boy? Gabriel was still on the floor, trying to catch his breath. He looked at the man with those innocent eyes full of purity and said softly, It wasn't me, sir. It's God. He does it. I'm just a vessel. I can't explain it well. I just know that when I touch, he acts. But not always. And I don't choose. He is the one who chooses. Dr. Henry was silent for a long moment, processing what had happened. Then a transformation began to take place on his face. Disbelief gave way to fascination. Fascination to ambition. He looked at Gabriel no longer with contempt, but with a new glint in his eyes. A dangerous glint. Mrs. Irene, take the boy to the guest room. Give him a bath, food, clean clothes. He's staying here. Gabriel looked around, confused. Stay here? In this huge house? But sir, I don't argue, boy. You just gave me my legs back. It's the least I can do. Go on, rest, eat. We'll talk tomorrow. Mrs. Irene, a short, kind-faced woman in her 60s, helped Gabriel to his feet. She looked at him with a mixture of awe and tenderness. "Come, son, I'll take care of you." Gabriel followed the housekeeper, still dazed by what had happened. She took him to a bathroom bigger than any place he had ever slept in. She prepared a bath with hot water, gave him scented soap, shampoo, soft towels. Gabriel had never experienced anything like it. The hot water relaxed his tense muscles, washed away weeks, maybe months of dirt. He cried in there without understanding why. Maybe from relief, maybe from fear, maybe from everything at once. When he got out, Mrs. Irene had laid out clean clothes, trousers, a shirt, socks, trainers. All new, all in his size. She dressed him carefully, like a mother dressing her child. Then she took him to the kitchen. "Eat, my child, eat as much as you want." There was food on the table, rice, beans, steak, salad, juice. Gabriel ate like he had never eaten in his life. Every forkful was a blessing. Every sip of juice was a miracle. Mrs. Irene stood there, watching, with tears in her eyes. When he finished, she took him to a room on the second floor, a huge bed with white sheets and fluffy pillows. Gabriel looked at it as if it were a dream. "You can sleep here, son. Tomorrow we'll see what happens." Gabriel lay down on that bed and for the first time in years felt safe. But there was something inside him, a restlessness, a premonition. He had seen the glint in Dr. Henry's eyes. He knew that glint. It was the glint of someone who saw an opportunity, someone who saw profit, someone who saw power. That night, while sleeping in the comfort of that bed, Gabriel dreamed of his mother. She was far away, very far, and he tried to reach her, but he couldn't. The more he ran, the further she moved away, until she turned and said something he couldn't understand. But he felt it. He felt the warning. He felt the danger. Downstairs, Dr. Henry couldn't sleep. He was walking around the room, testing his legs, marveling at what had happened. But his mind wouldn't stop. It wouldn't stop calculating, planning, imagining. The possibilities. A boy with the power to heal. A boy who could do what no doctor, no hospital, no technology could do. And that boy was now in his house. He picked up the phone and dialed a number. After a few rings, a male voice answered. "Charles? It's me, Henry. I need you to come here early tomorrow. I have something important to show you, something that will change everything." On the other end of the line, Charles Montgomery, Dr. Henry's lawyer and confidant, agreed without asking questions. Henry hung up and smiled. A smile that didn't reach his eyes, the smile of someone who had just found a gold mine. Upstairs, Gabriel woke up suddenly, his heart pounding. He looked around, disoriented, until he remembered where he was. The room was dark, silent, but he heard something, not with his ears. It was as if he heard it with his heart, a voice that had no words but that clearly said, "Be careful." He got up and went to the window. Down below, he saw Dr. Henry walking around the room, phone in hand, that smile on his face. And Gabriel knew. He knew that the comfort of this house had a price. He knew that what he had done, as pure as it was, would be used in some way. He knew his life had changed. For better or for worse, he didn't know yet. He went back to bed, but couldn't sleep anymore. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the mother he had lost, the years on the street, the hunger, the cold, the loneliness, and thinking about what was to come. Because something was coming. He could feel it, and he was afraid. When the sun rose over London, bringing another day of heat and hustle, Gabriel was awake. He put on the clothes Mrs. Irene had left and went downstairs slowly. The house was quiet. He found the kitchen, and there she was, making coffee. "Good morning, son. Did you sleep well?" Gabriel shrugged. Mrs. Irene served him a glass of milk and bread with butter. He ate in silence, watching the woman. She had a kind face, a face of someone who had suffered but hadn't let bitterness win. He liked her. He trusted her. "Mrs. Irene, what does Dr. Henry want with me?" The housekeeper stopped what she was doing and looked at the boy. She sighed deeply. I don't know, son, but I've known him for many years. He's a good man deep down, but the accident changed him. He became bitter. He became hard. And now that you've done what you've done, I don't know. I just know you need to be careful. Rich and powerful people, when they want something, they'll do anything to get it." Gabriel nodded. He already knew that. He had always known. But hearing it from Mrs. Irene confirmed his fears. Later, Dr. Henry called Gabriel into the living room. Charles Montgomery was there, a tall man in an impeccable suit with gold-rimmed glasses. He looked at Gabriel with interest, but also with skepticism. "This is the boy? This is him, Gabriel? This is Dr. Charles. He's my lawyer and my friend. I told him what happened yesterday." Charles crossed his arms, studying Gabriel. The boy felt the weight of that gaze and lowered his eyes. "Henry told me you have a gift, that you can heal people." "It's not me, sir. It's God." Charles gave a condescending smile. "Of course, but the fact is you made my friend walk again. And that's extraordinary. Henry has a proposal for you. He wants to help you, give you a better life. Education, a home, food, everything you need." Gabriel looked at Dr. Henry. The man was standing now, leaning on a cane, but standing. He smiled. "In return, all I ask is that you use your gift to help other people. People who are suffering, who are sick. Don't you want to help, Gabriel?" Gabriel hesitated. Of course he wanted to help. But there was something in the way Dr. Henry spoke, in the way Charles looked at him, that didn't feel right. "How would that work, sir?" "Well, you would come with me to the hospitals. You would touch the people who are sick, and they would get better. Simple as that." "And what do you get out of it?" Dr. Henry's smile widened. "Me? I get the satisfaction of helping, and of course my hospital network would become known as the place of miracles. But it's not about me, Gabriel. It's about the good we can do together." Gabriel looked at Mrs. Irene, who was standing at the door of the room, her hands clasped, her face worried. Then he looked back at Dr. Henry. "And if I don't want to?" Dr. Henry's smile vanished. Charles stepped forward. "Gabriel, you're a street kid. No family, no papers, no nothing. Dr. Henry is offering you a chance many would kill for. It would be very foolish to refuse. I'm not refusing, I'm just asking." There was a tense silence. Dr. Henry regained his composure and smiled again, but it was a cold smile now. "Of course, Gabriel, you have a choice. You always have a choice. But think about this. Here you have everything, out there you have nothing. That's all." Gabriel felt the veiled threat. It was no longer a proposal, it was an imposition. He looked at his own hands, those small, thin hands that had made a man walk again, and felt an enormous weight, a weight that shouldn't exist on a 12-year-old boy. "Can I think about it?" Dr. Henry nodded. "Of course, think. But don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't last forever." Gabriel left the room and ran up to his bedroom. He closed the door and threw himself on the bed, his heart pounding. He was scared, very scared. Because he knew that whatever he did, his life would never be the same, and that the gift he had, that gift he didn't understand, that gift from God, was about to be used in a way that wasn't right. He felt it. He felt it deep in his soul. And he didn't know what to do. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Continuing. The following days in the mansion were strange for Gabriel. He had everything he had ever dreamed of. Plenty of food, a soft bed, clean clothes, a hot bath. But none of it brought him peace. Dr. Henry became increasingly insistent, pressuring Gabriel to accept his proposal. Charles Montgomery showed up every day with new arguments, new plans, always with that cold smile that didn't reach his eyes. Gabriel tried to stand firm, but it was difficult. He was just a boy who had lived on the street, who had been hungry, who had slept in the cold. And now he had everything. How could he refuse? How could he go back to the street when he knew comfort? But every time he thought about accepting, he felt that tightness in his chest, that silent voice that said no. Mrs. Irene noticed the boy's conflict. She tried to protect him as she could, staying close when Dr. Henry called Gabriel to talk, serving tea and biscuits to break the tension, finding excuses to get the boy out of those meetings that felt more like interrogations. But she was just a housekeeper. She had no power to change anything. One morning, Dr. Henry gathered Gabriel, Charles, and 3 other men in the living room. They were businessmen, Gabriel realized from their expensive suits and the gold watches on their wrists. They looked at him as if he were a commodity. "Gabriel, these are my partners. They also believe in the potential of your gift. We want to do a demonstration. Bring some sick people here. You touch them, they get better. And that's it. We'll document everything. Videos, photos, testimonials. It's going to be incredible." Gabriel's stomach turned. This wasn't right. This wasn't what the gift was for. He knew it. He felt it. "No, sir. I can't do that." The silence that followed was heavy. The businessmen looked at each other. Charles frowned. Dr. Henry stood up from his chair, leaning on his cane, and walked over to Gabriel. His voice was low, but it had a threatening tone. "What did you say?" "I can't, sir. The gift isn't mine. I can't sell it. I can't use it like this." "Use it? Gabriel, you won't be using it. You'll be helping people. What's the problem?" "The problem is that you don't want to help people. You want to make money off them, and that's not right." One of the businessmen laughed, a scornful laugh. "Look at this, Henry, the street kid. Has morals now. How touching." Gabriel turned to the man, his eyes filled with a determination that didn't match his age. "I've always had morals, sir." "You're the one who lost yours." The businessman turned red with anger. Charles stepped forward, placing a hand on Gabriel's shoulder with force. "You're forgetting who you're talking to, boy. These people can give you everything or take everything from you. Choose your words carefully." Gabriel pulled away from Charles's hand, his heart pounding but his voice firm. "I don't want anything that comes from people like you. I'd rather go back to the street." Dr. Henry took a deep breath, trying to control his anger. He motioned to the businessmen. "Let's talk outside. Gabriel, you stay here and think better about what you're doing." The men left the room, but Gabriel heard their voices in the hallway. They were arguing. Dr. Henry was furious, so were the others. He heard words like ungrateful, lost cause, wasted opportunity. And then he heard something that made his blood run cold. "If he doesn't want to cooperate willingly, we'll have to find another way. Street kids disappear every day and nobody cares. We can keep him. Here under control, he'll do what we tell him." Gabriel didn't wait to hear more. He ran to his room, grabbed the trainers Mrs. Irene had given him, and ran back down the stairs. He had to get out of there. He had to escape. He passed through the kitchen, saw Mrs. Irene, and stopped. "Mrs. Irene, I'm leaving. Thank you for everything." The housekeeper dropped what she was doing and held the boy's arm. "What happened, son?" "They want to use me, and I won't let them. I'm going back to the street." Mrs. Irene looked at Gabriel with tears in her eyes. She knew this would happen. She knew her employer too well. "Wait, Gabriel, let me help you. I have a small house in Brixton. You can stay there with me. You don't have to go back to the street." Gabriel hesitated. He wanted to accept. He really wanted to. But he was afraid of putting Mrs. Irene in danger. "What if they come after me? What if they hurt you?" Mrs. Irene smiled, a sad but determined smile. "Let me worry about that. You saved me, Gabriel. Not with your hands, but you saved me. You reminded me that there's still goodness in the world. Now let me save you too." Before Gabriel could answer, they heard footsteps coming from the hallway. Dr. Henry was coming back. Mrs. Irene grabbed the boy's hand and pulled him towards the back door. "Go through the kitchen, out the service gate. Wait for me at the bus stop on the corner. I'll leave here in 2 hours when my shift ends. Wait for me there." Gabriel nodded and ran. He went out the back door, crossed the garden, and jumped the low wall that led to a side street. He heard shouts behind him. The security guards must have noticed, but he was fast. He knew the streets like the back of his hand. He ran through alleys, lanes, shortcuts that only those who live on the street know, until he was sure he wasn't being followed. He stopped in a square, panting, his heart pounding. He looked around. He was back on the streets, back to reality. But it was different now. Now he knew there were people looking for him, powerful people, dangerous people. He spent the next 2 hours hidden under the awning of a closed shop watching the street, alert to any suspicious movement. When the time came, he went to the bus stop. Mrs. Irene arrived a few minutes later carrying a bag. "Come, son, let's go home." They took the crowded bus, Gabriel sitting by the window, watching the city go by. London was huge, chaotic, noisy, but it was his home. It was where he had grown up, where he had learned to survive. And somehow that calmed him. Mrs. Irene's house was simple. 2 small bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, a bathroom. But it was clean, organized, filled with that smell of a real home. Gabriel had never smelled that before. He couldn't explain what it was, but he knew it was special. "This will be your room, Gabriel. It was my son's, but he lives far away now, works up north. You can use it as you please." Gabriel entered the room. It had a single bed, an old wardrobe, a desk, some band posters on the walls. It was simple, but it was more than he had ever had. "Mrs. Irene, are you sure? What if Dr. Henry finds out?" "Let him find out. I worked for him for 15 years. I never stole anything, never did anything wrong. If he wants to fire me for helping a child, let him. I'll find another job." Gabriel felt his eyes well up with tears. For the first time in his life, someone was choosing him, not because of the gift, not out of self-interest, but because they cared. Truly. "Thank you, Mrs. Irene. You don't know what this means to me." The housekeeper hugged the boy, and he let himself be hugged. He cried there, in the arms of this woman he barely knew, but whom he already loved as if she were his mother. He cried for the mother he had lost, for the life he had had, for the fear he felt. And he also cried with relief, for finally having found a home. The following days were peaceful. Gabriel helped Mrs. Irene with the housework, went to the market with her, learned to cook. She enrolled him in a local state school, and for the first time he began to study properly. It was hard. He couldn't read well, could barely do maths. But he tried, and little by little he learned. But the peace didn't last long. One morning, while watching television with Mrs. Irene, Gabriel saw something that made his blood run cold. On the screen, a woman in a white lab coat, her hair in a severe bun, was speaking to a reporter. She had a serious, almost cruel expression. "The case of the boy who supposedly cured Dr. Henry Alistair is a fraud. My studies prove that the boy used hallucinogenic drugs to manipulate the patient's perception. There was no real cure. It was all a farce, probably orchestrated by unscrupulous people who wanted to extort money from the Alistair family." The reporter asked more questions, and the doctor continued, each word a stab to Gabriel's heart. "This boy is dangerous. He needs to be committed and psychiatrically evaluated. The justice system has already been notified. We are taking the appropriate measures." Mrs. Irene turned off the television, her face pale. "My God, this is a setup. I saw what you did, Gabriel. I saw it with my own eyes. It wasn't a fraud." Gabriel was trembling. He knew this would happen. He knew it wouldn't be easy. But he hadn't imagined it would be like this. "Mrs. Irene, who is that woman?" "Dr. Lucy Fisher. She's a psychiatrist, and she's the cousin of Robert Alistair, Dr. Henry's brother." Gabriel frowned. "Brother? I didn't know he had a brother." "He does, and they hate each other. They fought over their father's inheritance years ago. Robert always wanted Henry to stay in the wheelchair because then he couldn't manage the hospitals properly. With Henry sick, Robert had more power. But now that you've cured Henry, Robert has lost that advantage. So she's lying to help Robert. Exactly. And she's going to use you to destroy Henry." Gabriel's head spun. He was in the middle of a fight between brothers, a fight of the rich and powerful. And he, a street kid, had no way to defend himself. 2 days later, the police knocked on Mrs. Irene's door. They had a court order. Gabriel was to be committed to a psychiatric clinic for evaluation. Mrs. Irene tried to argue, tried to stop them, but it was no use. The order came from a judge. There was nothing she could do. Gabriel was taken away. He didn't resist. He knew it would be pointless. He looked at Mrs. Irene through the window of the police car, saw her crying on the pavement, and felt as if he were losing his mother all over again. but he kept his head held high. He wouldn't cry. He wouldn't show weakness. He would face whatever came. The clinic was cold. White walls, the smell of disinfectant, fluorescent lights that hurt his eyes. Gabriel was put in a small room with a bed, a table, and a window with bars. They took his clothes and gave him light blue pajamas. They took his belongings, including a small crucifix Mrs. Irene had given him. He was just a number. Now, patient 342. Dr. Lucy came on the first day. She looked at Gabriel coldly, taking notes on a clipboard. "So you're the miracle boy. Let's see how long this fast lasts." She ordered the nurses to give Gabriel a sedative. He tried to refuse, but was held down by 3 men. He felt the needle enter his arm, and seconds later, everything became heavy. His eyelids, his arms, his legs, his mind, everything heavy, everything slow. He tried to fight, but he couldn't. And then it all went dark. When he woke up, he didn't know. How much time had passed? Hours? Days? His mouth was dry, his head ached, his body was weak. He tried to get up, but could barely move. He lay there, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in his life, Gabriel felt despair. True despair. There was no way out, no way to fight. He was trapped. He was alone. And he was scared. The days dragged on. Every morning they came with more sedatives. Gabriel tried to resist, but was always restrained. His mind became more and more confused, his body weaker and weaker. He could barely remember who he was. He could barely remember Mrs. Irene, Dr. Henry, everything that had happened. It was as if he were floating in a sea of fog, unable to find the shore. But there was one nurse, a young woman of about 25, with brown hair tied in a ponytail and kind eyes. Her name was Camilla, and unlike the others, she looked at Gabriel with compassion. One night, after everyone else had gone home, Camilla entered Gabriel's room. She brought fresh water and helped the boy drink. He was so weak he could barely hold the glass. "Gabriel, I know what they're doing to you, and it's not right. You shouldn't be here." Gabriel looked at her with glazed eyes, trying to focus, trying to understand. Why are you helping me?" "Because I saw what you did. My grandmother was a patient at Dr. Henry's hospital. She had cancer. She was suffering a lot. And one day, before all this blew up, she told me that a boy had touched her hand in the hallway and that the pain had gone away. It was you, wasn't it?" Gabriel tried to remember. There had been so many people, so many hands. But maybe it had been. Camilla wiped away a tear that was running down her face. She got better after that. The doctors said it was inexplicable, that the tumor had shrunk. She got more time to say goodbye to her family, time to make peace with things from the past. You gave her that, Gabriel, and I'll never forget it. Gabriel felt something awaken inside him. A spark. Small, but it was there. "Will you help me?" Camilla nodded. "I will, but I have to be careful. Dr. Lucy has eyes everywhere. But I'll reduce your doses bit by bit, and I'll gather evidence of what she's doing. Because this isn't treatment, this is torture, and someone needs to stop her." In the following days, Camilla kept her promise. Gabriel began to receive fewer sedatives. His mind started to clear up gradually. He could think again, remember again, and with lucidity returning, so did hope. Camilla collected documents, recorded conversations, photographed falsified prescriptions. She was building a complete dossier against Dr. Lucy. But she needed someone who could use that information, someone with power, and she only knew one person. One night, Camilla left the clinic and went to Mrs. Irene's house. She knocked on the door, and when the housekeeper opened it, she handed her an envelope. "This is proof of everything they're doing to Gabriel. You need to take this to someone who can help, someone with the power to get him out of there." Mrs. Irene opened the envelope and read the documents, looked at the photos. She felt the anger rise. How could they do that to a child? "I know someone, Dr. Charles, Dr. Henry's lawyer. He helped Gabriel in the beginning. Maybe he can do something." Camilla nodded. "Then find him quickly, because Gabriel can't take much more. They're killing him slowly." Mrs. Irene wasted no time. The next day, she went to Charles Montgomery's office. He was in a meeting, but she insisted. She said it was urgent. She said it was about Gabriel. And Charles saw her. When he saw the documents, Charles's face turned pale. "My God, is this true?" "It is, Doctor. And the boy is dying. You have to do something, please." Charles picked up the phone and called Dr. Henry. The conversation was short but intense. When he hung up, he looked at Mrs. Irene. "We're getting him out of there, tonight." And that's what they did. Charles assembled a team. Himself, Mrs. Irene, 2 trusted security guards, and Camilla, who offered to help from the inside. The plan was simple. Enter the clinic, get Gabriel, and leave. If anyone tried to stop them, they would show the documents. If they still tried to stop them, they would call the police. At midnight, they entered the clinic. Camilla guided them through the empty corridors. They reached Gabriel's room. The boy was lying down, pale, so thin he looked like a skeleton. He was breathing with difficulty. Mrs. Irene ran to him and held his hand. "Gabriel, son, we've come to get you." Gabriel opened his eyes with effort. He saw Mrs. Irene and smiled, a weak smile, but it was a smile. "I knew you would come." They lifted him carefully and carried him out. In the corridor, they met Dr. Lucy. She was furious. "What do you think you're doing? This boy is in my custody." Charles stepped forward, showing the documents. "Not for much longer, Doctor. This is proof of everything you've done: excessive sedation, falsification of reports, abuse of authority. You're going to answer for all of this." The doctor turned pale. She tried to argue, but there was no way. The evidence was there, clear and irrefutable. Charles called the police right then and there, and while they waited, they took Gabriel to the car. He was taken directly to Dr. Henry's private hospital. He was placed in the ICU, given IV fluids, medication, intensive care. The days passed slowly. Mrs. Irene stayed by his side the whole time. And slowly, very slowly, Gabriel began to get better. He spent 15 days in the ICU. 15 days, in which Gabriel was between life and that threshold, where everything was still uncertain. The doctors did everything: IV fluids, medications to cleanse his system of the sedatives, vitamins, tube feeding. But the boy's body was so fragile that it responded slowly, very slowly. Mrs. Irene never left his side. She slept in an armchair next to the bed, held Gabriel's hand when he stirred in his sleep, talked to him, even knowing he might not be able to hear. She told him stories from her own childhood, about her son who lived far away, about how life had been hard but always worth fighting for. She spoke softly, with that motherly voice that soothes any wound. Camilla also visited every day after work. She had been suspended from the psychiatric clinic, but she had no regrets. She knew she had done the right thing. She brought flowers to Gabriel's room, changed the water in the vase, adjusted the curtains so the sunlight wouldn't shine directly on the boy's face. They were small gestures, but full of care, of love. Charles Montgomery would also stop by, always with folders under his arm, always with news about the case against Dr. Lucy and Robert Alistair. The evidence was solid, the justice system was moving, but Charles knew that justice for the rich was slow, very slow. Still, he didn't give up. He was determined to see those 2 pay for what they did. And Dr. Henry. He was the one who surprised everyone the most. During his first visits, he would stand at the door of the room, just watching. He wouldn't enter. He wouldn't speak. He would just look at that boy in the bed, so small, so fragile, and something inside him would break. The guilt was like a weight on his chest. He knew he had been greedy. He had seen Gabriel not as a person but as an opportunity, and he had almost caused the loss of that child. One afternoon, when Mrs. Irene had stepped out for a coffee, Dr. Henry finally entered the room. He sat in the chair next to the bed and remained there in silence, looking at Gabriel. The boy was sleeping, his face pale, his lips dry, but he was breathing, alive. "I'm so sorry, Gabriel. I know you can't hear me, but I have to say it. I'm so sorry. I was an idiot, a selfish idiot. You gave me my legs back, you gave me a second chance, and I wanted to use you. I wanted to turn your gift into money, as if you were a machine, as if you had no feelings, no soul. But you do. You have more soul than I do, more than I will ever have." Dr. Henry's voice broke. He wiped away a tear that was running down his face. "If you wake up, if you get better, I promise I'll do things differently. I'll be different. You taught me something, Gabriel. You taught me that life isn't about what we have. It's about what we do with what we have. And I have a lot. I have money. I have power. I have influence. And I'm going to use it all to do good. For real. Not out of self-interest. But because it's right. Because it's what you showed me I should do." He held Gabriel's small hand carefully, as if afraid of breaking it. And he sat there, holding that hand, until Mrs. Irene returned. On the 16th day, Gabriel opened his eyes. It was early in the morning as the sun began to stream through the window, painting the room in a soft golden light. Mrs. Irene was there, as always, and when she saw the boy move, she held her breath. "Gabriel? Son? Can you hear me?" Gabriel turned his head slowly, his eyes focusing on the woman's face, and he smiled. A weak, tired smile, but it was a smile. "Mrs. Irene." The housekeeper let the tears fall freely. Tears of relief, of happiness, of gratitude. She kissed the boy's forehead, repeating softly, "Thank God. Thank God." The doctors were called. They ran tests, checked vital signs, asked questions. Gabriel was weak, very weak, but he was lucid. He was back. The news spread quickly. Camilla arrived in a rush, still in her uniform. Charles appeared soon after, and Dr. Henry, who was in his office at the hospital, came up immediately. When he entered the room and saw Gabriel awake, sitting up in bed, drinking water with Mrs. Irene's help, he felt his chest tighten. He approached the boy slowly, as if afraid of startling him. "Gabriel, how are you feeling?" Gabriel looked at the man. He saw the guilt in his eyes. He saw the regret, and somehow he understood, because Gabriel had a pure heart, a heart that knew how to forgive. "I'm better, Dr. Henry. Thank you for helping me." Dr. Henry sat on the edge of the bed, his voice choked with emotion. "No, I'm the one who has to thank you, and ask for forgiveness. For everything. I was terrible to you. I wanted to use your gift to make money. I forgot you were a child. I forgot you were a person, and because of that, you almost died. I'll never forgive myself for that." Gabriel reached out and touched the man's arm. "But I forgive you, sir, because everyone makes mistakes and everyone deserves a second chance." Dr. Henry couldn't hold back his tears. He cried there in front of everyone, without shame, without hiding. He cried for the mistakes he had made, for the greed that had almost destroyed a life, for the lesson that boy had taught him. And he also cried with gratitude, because Gabriel was alive, and he was forgiving. The recovery was slow, but steady. Gabriel spent another 2 weeks in the hospital. Little by little he gained weight, regained his strength. Mrs. Irene brought him homemade food, the kind only a mother can make. Rice and beans, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh orange juice. And Gabriel ate it all, savoring every bite, thankful to be alive. Meanwhile, outside, justice was moving forward. Dr. Lucy Fisher was arrested. The evidence against her was irrefutable. Excessive sedation, falsification of medical records, abuse of authority. She tried to claim she was acting in self-defense of society, that Gabriel was dangerous. But no one believed her. The evidence showed the truth. She had acted for money from Robert Alistair. Robert was also investigated. The conspiracy came to light. He had paid his cousin to discredit Gabriel and consequently harm his brother Henry. He wanted Henry back in the wheelchair, wanted him to lose control of the hospitals. It was a power struggle, and Gabriel had been just a pawn in a cruel game. But the game was over. Robert was arrested. The media covered it all. The scandal was enormous. The Alistair family, so respected in London, was tarnished. But strangely, this didn't bother Dr. Henry. He had changed. He no longer cared about reputation or status, he only cared about doing the right thing. When Gabriel was finally discharged, Dr. Henry called him for a talk. They were in the living room of the mansion. Gabriel had gone back to live with Mrs. Irene, but he agreed to go there to talk. "Gabriel, I want to do something for you. Something real, not out of self-interest, but because I want to. I want to adopt you, officially. I want you to be my son, not to replace anyone, not to erase your past, but to give you a future. A real future." Gabriel looked at the man, surprised. "You want to adopt me?" "I do. If you'll accept, of course. I know I don't deserve it. I know I was terrible to you, but I've changed, Gabriel. You changed me, and I want the chance to be the father you deserve, or at least to try." Gabriel thought for a moment. He looked at Mrs. Irene, who was sitting beside him. She smiled and nodded. "If that's what you want, son, I support you. Dr. Henry made a mistake, but he's trying to fix it, and everyone deserves that chance." Gabriel looked back at Dr. Henry and smiled. "I accept, but on one condition." "What is it?" "That Mrs. Irene lives here too. She's like a mother to me. I can't live without her." Dr. Henry smiled, a genuine smile this time. "Of course. She is most welcome. In fact, I was going to propose that myself. Mrs. Irene is no longer my housekeeper. She's part of the family." Mrs. Irene wiped away her tears, moved, and so on that sunny afternoon in London, a new family was born. Not a perfect family, but a real one, built on mistakes, forgiveness, and love. The months that followed were ones of transformation. Dr. Henry kept his promise. He didn't pressure Gabriel to use his gift again. In fact, Gabriel never used it again. That phase was over. The boy grew, studied, developed, and Dr. Henry discovered that being a father was much more fulfilling than being rich. But Henry didn't stop there. He looked around and saw how many children lived on the streets of London, how many were hungry, cold, scared, how many had no one. And he decided to do something about it. He created a foundation, not an ordinary shelter where children would stay for a few days and then go back to the street, but permanent homes, real houses with structure, with psychologists, educators, teachers, places where children could stay until they became adults, until they learned a trade, until they were ready to live on their own. The first home was opened 6 months after Gabriel's adoption. It was in Kensington, a large and cozy townhouse. It had capacity for 20 children. Gabriel was there on the opening day. He met each child, talked to each one, listened to their stories. And somehow he connected with all of them, because Gabriel understood. He understood what it was like to have no one. He understood what it was like to be hungry, cold, scared. And now, with a family, with a home, with security, he wanted to help. He wanted to do for others what had been done for him. In the following years, more homes were opened. 10, 20, 50. The foundation grew, and Gabriel was always present. He visited the homes, met the children, talked to the educators. He became a constant presence, a symbol of hope. To the children, he was more than Dr. Henry's son. He was one of them, someone who had lived what they were living, and who had managed to get out, who had managed to have a better life. Gabriel never performed physical healings again, but he discovered he had another gift, the gift of listening, of comforting, of understanding. He knew when a child was sad, even if they were smiling. He knew when someone needed a hug, a word, a moment of silence. And he was always there, always available, always present. At 15, Gabriel was a respected young man. He studied at a good school, got good grades, had friends. But his passion was the children of the foundation. He spent his weekends at the homes, helping with homework, organizing games, talking. He was loved by all of them. They called him brother, friend, guide. Some, the youngest ones, called him father. And Gabriel accepted each title with humility and gratitude. Mrs. Irene, now living in the mansion as part of the family, also got involved. She cooked for the homes, visited the children, helped however she could. Camilla, the nurse who had helped Gabriel, became a social worker for the foundation. She worked directly with the children, taking care of their emotional and psychological needs. and Charles. Montgomery, who had never had children of his own, became a sort of uncle to all the children in the foundation. He visited regularly, brought gifts, talked about life. He was part of that big family that had been born from suffering, but was now growing in love. One day, when Gabriel was 17, Dr. Henry called him for a talk. They were in the mansion's library, surrounded by old books and that smell of paper and wisdom. "Gabriel, I want to propose something to you. We've been thinking about opening a school, not an ordinary school, but a real school, where children from all classes can study together, poor and rich side by side, no difference, with the best facilities, the best teachers, a school that will be a benchmark, and I want to name it after you." Gabriel looked at his adoptive father, surprised. "My name? But why?" "Because you are the symbol of everything we do. You represent transformation, hope, love. You are proof that change is possible, that one can be better, and I want the children who study at this school to know that. I want them to see you and believe that they can, too." Gabriel was silent for a moment, processing. Then he smiled, that smile that had won so many hearts. "I accept, but on one condition." Dr. Henry laughed. He knew Gabriel always had a condition. "What is it?" "That the school isn't just named after me, that it's also named after Mrs. Irene, Camilla, and Dr. Charles, because they helped me. Without them, I wouldn't be here, so it has to have all their names." Dr. Henry felt his eyes well up with tears. This boy had a heart bigger than the world. He nodded. "Deal. It will be the Gabriel, Irene, Camilla, and Charles School. What a long name, but it will be perfect." The school was built. It took 2 years, but when it was finished, it was a dream come true. A modern building with spacious classrooms, a huge library, laboratories, sports courts, green areas, everything designed to provide the best possible education. On the opening day, there were hundreds of people, journalists, authorities, families, and of course the children from the foundation. They were in the front row, dressed in their new uniforms, their eyes shining with emotion. Gabriel gave a speech, brief but moving. He spoke about his journey, about the people who helped him, about the importance of believing, and he ended with a sentence that would be remembered forever. "The real cure is not making someone walk, it's teaching them how to walk together." The entire auditorium stood up and applauded. There were tears, hugs, celebration, and Gabriel, there on the stage next to Mrs. Irene, Camilla, Charles, and Dr. Henry, felt that he had found his place in the world. He was no longer the street boy. He was no longer the boy with the mysterious gift. He was Gabriel, simply Gabriel. And that was more than enough. The following years were ones of growth and consolidation. The Gabriel, Irene, Camilla, and Charles School became a benchmark for education throughout the UK. Children from all social classes studied there, side by side. There was no difference between those who paid and those on full scholarships. Everyone wore the same uniform, had the same teachers, the same opportunities. And they learned, from an early age, that a person's value is not in what they have, but in who they are. Gabriel, now 20, was studying psychology at university. He wanted to better understand the human mind, to be able to help the children he loved so much more effectively. But even with his studies, he never strayed from the foundation. Every week he visited the homes, talked to the children, participated in activities. He was a constant presence, a safe harbor for anyone who needed it, and they needed it. Many arrived with deep traumas, abuse, abandonment, violence. They came from the streets, from broken families, from situations no child should ever have to experience. But there in the foundation's homes they found something different. They found love. They found respect. They found the chance to be children again. Gabriel had a special way with them. He knew how to listen without judging. He knew how to comfort without pressuring. He knew how to be present without invading. And the children felt it. They trusted him. They opened their hearts. And slowly, very slowly, they began to heal. Not a physical healing, like the one Gabriel had performed years ago, but a much deeper healing. The healing of the soul. There was one girl in particular. Her name was Julia. She was 8 when she arrived at the foundation. She had been through terrible things on the streets. She didn't talk to anyone, didn't smile, didn't play. She just stayed in a corner, staring into space, as if she had disconnected from the world. The psychologists tried, the educators tried, but Julia wouldn't open up. Until Gabriel started visiting her. Every day he would go to where she was, sit beside her, and just be there, in silence. He didn't force conversation. He didn't demand anything. He was just there, present. At first, Julia ignored him, pretended he didn't exist, but Gabriel persisted, day after day, week after week. And slowly, the girl began to notice that he wasn't going away, to notice that he was there for her, without wanting anything in return, just there. It was on a Sunday morning, as the sun streamed through the living room window, that Julia finally spoke. Gabriel was sitting next to her, reading a book in silence when he heard her small, quiet voice. "Why do you come here every day?" Gabriel closed his book and looked at her. He smiled gently. "Because I care about you." Julia frowned, suspicious. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to know you to care. You're here, you're part of this family, and we take care of family. But I'm not your real family." Gabriel reached out and slowly took Julia's small hand. "Family isn't just about blood, Julia. Family is who is by your side when you need them. It's who takes you in when you're lost. It's who loves you even when you can't love yourself. And I love you. Everyone here loves you. You are our family. For real." Julia felt her eyes fill with tears. They were the first tears she had shed since she arrived. And for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to feel the pain, the anger, the fear, but also to feel the love, the care, the hope. She threw herself into Gabriel's arms and cried. She cried a lot. Years of pain came out in that cry. And Gabriel held her, stroking her hair, whispering words of comfort. He didn't try to stop the crying. He just let her feel. Because sometimes healing begins right there, in the permission to feel. After that day, Julia began to open up. Slowly, but she began. She talked more, smiled more, played with the other children. The transformation was slow, but it was real, and Gabriel was there every step of the way, encouraging, supporting, loving. Years later, when Julia was 15, she wrote a letter to Gabriel, a letter he would keep forever. "Dear Gabriel, I want you to know that you saved me, not because you touched me and healed me of some disease, but because you stayed, because you didn't give up, because you showed me that I was loved even when I couldn't love myself. You taught me that life can be good, that people can be good, and that I deserve to be happy. Thank you for being my brother, my friend, my guide. Thank you for teaching me how to walk again. I love you." Gabriel cried when he read that letter. He cried with emotion, with gratitude, with fulfillment, because he realized that this was his true gift, not making wounds disappear, but making hearts heal. And that was so much more powerful. Meanwhile, Dr. Henry was getting older. He was now 60, his hair completely white, his body slower, but his heart at peace. He looked at everything he had built with Gabriel, and felt pride. But more than that, he felt gratitude. Gratitude that this boy had appeared in his life, that he had transformed not only his legs, but his soul. One afternoon he called Gabriel, Mrs. Irene, Camilla, and Charles for a meeting. They all sat in the living room, curious. "I've gathered you here because I want to share a decision. I'm getting old, not as old as I look, but I feel I've done what I needed to do. And I want to ensure that everything we've built continues. So I've created a perpetual fund for the foundation. It's enough money to maintain all the homes, the school, and the projects for generations. Even when I'm no longer here, everything will continue." Mrs. Irene took his hand, her eyes misty. "Henry, you still have a lot of time ahead of you." Dr. Henry smiled. "I know, Irene, but it's good to be prepared. And I want you to know that I'm at peace, because I know that the legacy I leave is not one of money or power. It's one of love, of transformation, and that no one can take away." Gabriel stood up and hugged his adoptive father, and in that hug, years of history passed, Years of mistakes, of forgiveness, of growth. Years of a journey that had started with a street boy looking for food in the trash and now culminated in a united family, a legacy of hope. The years continued to pass. Gabriel graduated with a degree in psychology and began working officially at the foundation. Not as a volunteer, but as a coordinator. He managed the homes, supervised the educators, and counseled the children. And he did it all with the same dedication and love as always. Julia, the girl he had helped, grew up to be a beautiful and strong young woman. She decided to study social work and return to work at the foundation too. She wanted to help other children as she had been helped. She wanted to be for someone what Gabriel had been for her. The foundation grew even more. There were now over 100 homes spread across London and other cities. Thousands of children had passed through them. Many had graduated, found jobs, started families. And they all carried with them the lesson they had learned. Love transforms. Mrs. Irene, now 75, decided to retire from active work. But she didn't abandon the foundation. She continued to visit the homes, talk to the children, cook her special recipes. She was the grandmother to all of them, and she was loved unconditionally. Camilla, who had been the brave nurse who saved Gabriel from the clinic, became the foundation's director of social services. She managed all areas of mental and emotional health, and she was excellent at what she did. Her empathy and dedication inspired everyone around her. Charles Montgomery, even at 68, remained active. He managed the legal side of the foundation, ensured everything was in order, protected the children from any legal threats. And in his spare time, he visited the homes, told stories, made the children laugh. He was the uncle everyone wished they had. On a rainy day in June, Dr. Henry gathered everyone for one last conversation. He was more frail, his body tired from a long life, but his eyes still had that glint of someone who had made peace with life. "I want you to know that I am the happiest man in the world, not for the money I had, not for the power I achieved, but for the family I found. You are my greatest achievement. And Gabriel, you are my greatest pride. You taught me what it means to be human. You taught me that true wealth lies in loving. And I love you, son, more than words can express." Gabriel held his father's hand, tears streaming freely. "I love you too, Dad. And thank you for everything, for taking me in, for forgiving me, for teaching me to forgive. You changed my life. You saved my life." Dr. Henry smiled, and in that smile there was peace. There was completeness. There was the certainty of a life well lived. A few months later, on a quiet September morning, Dr. Henry passed away. He went peacefully, surrounded by those he loved, and he left a legacy that would endure for generations. The funeral was immense. Hundreds of people attended, patients he had treated, hospital staff, families of the children from the foundation. But the ones who cried the most were the children, the hundreds of children he had helped. They were there, all in their uniforms, with flowers in their hands, paying tribute to the man who had transformed their lives. Gabriel gave the eulogy. It was difficult. The words failed him. His voice choked. But he managed. He spoke about the man Dr. Henry was. He spoke about his mistakes, because they were a part of him. But he spoke above all about his transformation, about how he had chosen to be better, about how he had dedicated his life to doing good. And at the end, Gabriel said something that summed it all up. "My father taught me that it's never too late to change, that it's never too late to choose love, and that a person's true legacy is not in what they accumulate, but in what they give." He gave everything, his time, his money, his heart, and because of that he will never die, because he lives on in every child who passed through here, in every life he touched, in every smile he helped create. Thank you, Dad, for everything. The following years were ones of continuity. Gabriel took over as president of the foundation. He continued his father's work with the same dedication. The foundation grew even more, reaching other cities, other regions, and always maintaining its essence: love, respect, dignity. Julia became Gabriel's right hand. They worked together every day, caring for the children, solving problems, dreaming up new projects. And between them something more flourished. A deep friendship that over time transformed into love. A pure love, built on mutual respect and admiration. They married in a simple ceremony, in the chapel of the Foundation's first home. All the children were there. Mrs. Irene cried with emotion. Camilla and Charles were the best man and maid of honor, and as they exchanged vows, Gabriel and Julia knew they were not just building a family, but continuing a legacy of love that had begun years ago with a street boy and his mysterious gift. Gabriel never used that gift again. He never again touched someone and made a disease disappear. But every day, he used his true gift, the gift of loving, of comforting, of transforming, and that gift was infinitely more powerful. The children of the Foundation grew and transformed into responsible, ethical, loving adults. Many returned to work at the Foundation, others pursued different careers, but always maintained the bond. They always remembered where they came from, and they always passed on the love they had received. Mrs. Irene, now 82, continued to be everyone's grandmother. Slower, more frail, but with the same enormous heart. She would sit on the porches of the homes and tell stories to the children, stories of Gabriel, of Dr. Henry, of how it all began, and the children would listen, fascinated, learning that where you come from doesn't matter. What matters is where you're going. Camilla and Charles also grew older but remained active. She with her mental health projects, he with his legal protection. They were pillars of the Foundation, and they were loved by all. One December afternoon, 25 years after the day Gabriel first entered Dr. Henry's mansion, he was sitting on the porch of the Foundation's first home. Julia was by his side, pregnant with their first child. They watched the children playing in the garden. Laughter, running, pure joy. Gabriel looked at his wife and smiled. Sometimes I think about everything that happened, how my life changed, and I'm amazed, because I was a street kid, with nothing, with no one. And now I have everything. Not money, but love, family, purpose. Julia took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. You know what's most incredible? It's that you didn't just change your life. You changed the lives of thousands of people, and you'll keep changing them. Because love multiplies. Every child who passes through here takes a little of that love with them and passes it on, and so the chain never breaks. Gabriel thought about that. The chain of love. Started by a gift he never fully understood, but which led him to discover his true purpose. Not to heal bodies, but to heal souls, to restore dignity, to plant hope. At that moment, one of the children came running up to him. He was a boy of about 7 with disheveled hair and bright eyes. Uncle Gabriel, can you play with us? Gabriel smiled and stood up. Of course, let's go. And he went. He ran with the children, played, laughed. And in those simple moments, he found true happiness, because he understood that life isn't about grand gestures. It's about the small moments, the small kindnesses, the small loves that, when added together, create something immense. And so Gabriel lived. Not as the miracle boy, not as the one who made people walk, but as the one who taught them how to walk, together, always together. Because that's how life should be, a shared journey, where no one is left behind, where everyone has value, where everyone is loved. The years went on. Gabriel and Julia had 3 children. They raised them with the same values they had learned: love, respect, compassion. And the children grew up seeing their parents work, seeing the dedication, seeing the impact. And they decided, each in their own way, to continue the legacy. The Foundation surpassed the mark of 200 homes. There were more than 5,000 children being cared for simultaneously, and countless others had already passed through and built their lives. The impact was measurable in numbers, but it was immeasurable in transformed hearts. Mrs. Irene passed away at 87. She went peacefully in her sleep with a smile on her face. Her funeral was beautiful. Hundreds of people she had helped, cared for, loved. And they all had a story, a memory, a lesson she had taught. She was buried next to Dr. Henry, as was her wish. And Gabriel, seeing the 2 graves side by side, knew they were together, watching over everyone from above. as they always had. Camilla continued to work until she was 70. Then she finally retired. But she didn't stop helping. She continued visiting, advising, loving. She was an inspiration to all. And when she passed away at 81, she left a void. But she also left a legacy of empathy and dedication that would never be forgotten. Charles lived to be 92. He worked until his last days. He said he didn't know how to do anything else but care for the children. And when he finally passed, it was with the certainty of a life well lived, a life dedicated to what truly matters. Gabriel, now 60, continued to lead the foundation. Slower, more tired, but with the same passion. Julia by his side always, their children now adults working too, and the grandchildren starting to appear. The family was growing, the love was multiplying. On an ordinary day, nothing special, Gabriel was sitting in his office at the foundation when he received an unexpected visitor. It was a woman in her 40s, well-dressed with a kind smile. "Gabriel, I don't know if you remember me. My name is Caroline. I was in one of the foundation's homes when I was 10. Gabriel looked at her, trying to remember. There were so many children, so many faces. "I'm sorry, I don't seem to recall." Caroline smiled, not offended. "That's okay. You were supposed to forget. I was just one among thousands. But you didn't forget me. You welcomed me. You listened to me. You made me feel like I mattered. And I want you to know that I became a doctor because of you, because you showed me that caring for people is what gives life meaning. I came here today to thank you and to tell you that I'm opening a community clinic to help those who can't afford it, because that's what you taught me, to pass on the love I received." Gabriel felt his eyes fill with tears. This was everything. This was why he lived, for these moments, to know that love was multiplying, that the chain continued. "Caroline, you have no idea what your words mean to me. Thank you for taking the opportunity, for becoming this incredible person, and for continuing the legacy. That's what matters, not what I did, but what you will do." They talked for hours. Caroline told her story, her challenges, her victories, and when she left, Gabriel stayed there, alone in his office, reflecting on life, on choices, on what truly matters. And he understood that his gift was never about performing physical miracles. His gift was always about planting seeds of love, of hope, of possibility. And those seeds were now blossoming in thousands of people, in Caroline, in Julia, in so many others, and they would continue to blossom for generations. Gabriel stood up and went to the window. He looked at the garden, saw the children playing, saw the educators caring for them, saw life happening, and he smiled, a smile of peace, of completeness, of gratitude, because he understood that the true cure was never about making someone walk. It was about teaching them how to walk together, always together, in a journey of love that has no end. And so Gabriel's story continues, not in history books, not in the news, but in hearts, in smiles, in transformed lives. Because that is the true legacy, the only one that matters, the only one that remains. Love. Always love. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Gabriel's story has touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of transformation, forgiveness, and love, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which moment marked you the most. Every day we bring intense and profound stories like this one, which reveal the most human side of the soul and teach us about compassion, hope, and the strength of true love. We look forward to seeing you in the next episode, because here every story is a life lesson that deserves to be heard and shared.